Today's shiur is Shabbat Daf Ayin Tet. Today's daf is sponsored by Leslie Glassberg Nadel in memory of her mother Tova Bat Tzvi Hirsch Zichronah Livracha, and by an anonymous donor in loving memory of Amuna Bracha Esther, and in honor of the incredible women in her life, both mentors and students who are learning Daf Yomi. Okay, with that, we'll start on Ayin Tet. We're actually going to start on Ayin Chet Amabet at the bottom, where I ended yesterday. We'll go back a little bit just to review. So Tanu Rabbanan, we're about 9 lines from the bottom. Hamotzi sharchov ad shelo pra'o chayav mishe pra'o patur. Rabbi Yehuda omer af mishe pra'o chayav mipnei shetzarich lo. We had a bunch of debates about whether one is obligated for taking something out on Shabbat. If you have a document, an IOU, a promissory note, before the money is returned, then you're going to be obligated. Once the money is returned, you're patur because it's a useless document. Rabbi Yehuda said, even once you return it, it's actually not useless. So today we're going to see a number of different interpretations as to why that is. So about how to understand this machloket between them. So my benayu, Amar Rav Yosef, asur l'shot shtar parua ika benayu. What we saw yesterday was there's a debate about whether one can keep a document once it's a promissory note, once it's already paid back. The concern is that maybe somebody will be not so honest and will try to claim the money again, try to get the money from the other person again. So therefore, we make him rip it up, or generally they would actually have to give it to the borrower. So the borrower would then say, okay, now I have it, okay? And you don't have it anymore, so that you can't claim the money. Or maybe the person would die and the kids would find the note. Right now, what's the issue? The issue is the person might want to save it because it's maybe written on a piece of parchment or even paper. All those things were valuable in those days. They didn't want to just throw it out. They might use it for something else. But the danger is they might use it to claim that the person owes them money when the person already paid them back. So if you hold, Rabbanan hold, asur l'shot shtar parua, you can't keep a shtar parua anymore, in which case this is it's useless for you because you're not allowed to use it for anything. Rabbi Yehuda savar mutar l'shot shtar parua. You can use it for something else, and therefore it's basically a useful piece of useful object. In which case, if you carry it out on Shabbat, you're going to be obligated. Abai Amar, he disagrees. He says the kulei ama savar, kulei ama asur l'shot shtar parua. Nobody allows this shtar parua. Of course, you have to rip up the shtar parua. It's useless. So then, what's the issue here? Well, it's not exactly a shtar parua that we're talking about here. The issue here is, or maybe it's a debate whether it's a shtar parua. You need to know some background here, which is, if you bring a document to court, so it has to be ratified in court. That means, right, you claim I owe you money, you bring a shtar chov, and you have to prove that the signatures are valid. So either you bring the witnesses or you bring someone who recognizes the witnesses' signatures, and they validate the document. Let's say you come and you say, I know that that this shtar was, you say, I agree with you. We wrote this document. It's a valid document. I did borrow money from you, but I paid the money back, okay? This is a classic case, what we call in the Gemara, this comes up a lot, hapesha asal hu hapesha hitil. That means the only way we know this document is valid right now is by the words of the Love, who says, I borrowed the money. You're right. It's a good, valid document. If he didn't say that, we wouldn't know it was valid. We'd have to ratify it. He, though, says, but I already paid the money back. So now the person who says that this is a valid document is now saying, but the document is just no longer, it is a valid document, but it's no longer relevant because I already paid the money back. This is like a woman comes to a new town. Nobody knows her. And she says that she goes to get married and they ask her, are you married? She says, no. She says, I was married, but now I'm divorced. And then they say, oh, well, you better prove you're divorced, right? But she doesn't need to prove she's divorced because if she hadn't said anything, right, once we believe her for part of what she says, then we believe her for the other part. Either we don't believe her at all, in which case we throw out everything and all we know is she's single because we don't have any proof that she's married. Or we say, well, we believe you, but then we believe you all the way. Hapesha asal, the one who forbids to themselves, right, can also permit it, because otherwise we wouldn't know you'd be forbidden. So likewise here. Once the person agreed, so now let's read it inside again. He's modeh b'shtar shekatvo. He admits that there was a shtar. There's a machloket tzarich l'kayim or not. Do we say hapesh asar or hapesh yitir, and this doesn't need ratification, and we can believe the person that it's not a shtar? So if you say that, so Tanakama Savar modeh b'shtar shekatvo shetzarich l'kaimo. He thinks you need to ratify it. If you need to ratify it, right, then, so now we'll have to wait and see how this connects, because they're going to change some of the word. Rabbi Yehuda Savar modeh b'shtar shekatvo ein tzarich l'kaimo. You don't have to ratify the shtar. Umay ad shelo pra'o, umisha pra'o. So now go back and read. The Braita said, Amotzi shtar chov, ad shelo pra'o means ad shiomar loveh parati. Okay, which really means, Rashi says, ad shelo amar parati. Okay, if he doesn't say parati, let's say I come forward, you come forward and you say, yes, the promissory note that I am holding right now, you say is valid. Now, if you said, you didn't say, I paid it back, then that's a valid promissory note right now. Why is it valid? Because it doesn't need ratification because you admit it. But if we say, lo para, misha para'o, patur. But if I said parati already, right? Once I said, but I paid it back, then it's patur because it's invalid at this point, right? I'm the only one who ratified it, basically. So Tanakama says, if you're modeh b'shtar shekatvo tzarich, 1 second, I feel like I'm missing something. Modeh b'shtar shekatvo, modeh shetzarich l'kaimo, v'lomar lo parati. Right. He says, according to Tanakama, if he says parati, then we're going to view it as it doesn't need to be ratified, right? It's only because he said it. This is hapesh asaru hapesh yitir. Since he says parati, the shtar is no longer valid. But the Rabbi Yehuda would say, no, adayin sarich lo, because we don't believe him, and we have to go sarich, right? So then he says, modeh b'shtar shekatvo ein sarich l'kaimo, meaning once he says, I really owe you, once you say, I really owe you money, then what happens? Once you say, the shtar was good, but I paid you back the money. So if he says, I paid you back the money, according to Rabbi Yehuda, we don't believe him. Because modeh b'shtar shekatvo ein tzarich l'kaimo, as soon as you admit, we don't need to ratify the document, and he doesn't hold hapesh asaru hapesh yitir. You said, it was a shtar, it's a shtar. Go prove that you paid it back. You can't prove it, I can actually claim the money back. Since I can claim the money back, the shtar is still valid according to Rabbi Yehuda. And therefore, if you take it out on Shabbat, you're going to be obligated. Okay, that's a whole debate between them. Okay, that's the second answer to how to understand the debate. Rava disagrees with Abaye and says, everybody agrees that tzarich l'kaimo, okay, meaning that hapesh asar hu hapesh yitir, okay, and then again, what I think I didn't explain this well enough. Tzarich l'kaimo means that since if I come claiming money and you claim that I agree it's a valid shtar, but I paid it back already, we need to be mekayem the shtar, meaning I can go say that the shtar is valid, and we can, 1 second, I keep saying it wrong. Sorry, I'm getting confused today. Shetzarich l'kaimo means that you would need to validate it, meaning that it's as if the Loves said nothing, right? Tzarich l'kaimo means that the Loves words were meaningless, basically. We're back to square one. The fact that the Love admitted that the shtar was good doesn't really mean anything. Okay, because hapesh asar hu hapesh yitir. It's basically as if he said nothing. And then you have to go be mekayim the shtar. If you have to be mekayim the shtar, okay, now I have it more clear. Sorry that I didn't explain it before. Now that I have to be mekayim the shtar, what does this mean? This means that the shtar is useless until I ratify it. So if I walk out with it on Shabbat, it's useless because it doesn't mean anything to me, because it has no use for me. Whereas if you say, ein tzarich l'kaimo, that means that by virtue of the fact that you admitted it was a good shtar, we take that testimony. We don't take the testimony that you said you already paid it back, and this shtar is actually valid, and I can take the money back from you. So according to Rava, everybody agrees, modeh b'shtar shekatvo shetzarich l'kaimo, meaning hapesh asar hu hapesh yitir, and there's no machloket about that issue. The hacha, what's the machloket here then? We have to find something that's a machloket, so it can't be because of that. B'kotvin shovar kamiflagen. Okay, again, this is all about if you pay me back the money, what do we do to prove so that I don't end up being stuck, that you're going to claim that, sorry, I keep getting confusing the people, that you don't come back and say, how do we protect you so that I can't come back with the shtar and say, here, you owe me money, and you have no proof that you paid the money back? Obviously, the best thing to do is to have witnesses, but sometimes even witnesses doesn't help because the witnesses could disappear. So basically, generally, what would the smartest thing to be? I would give you the shtar chov after you paid it back, the promissory note, and you could do whatever you want with it. You could rip it up, you could save it to prove something. But once it's out of my hands, it's obviously in your hands, and then you're protected. So the question is, what's another method? You could be kotvin shovar. We could write a receipt. I could write a receipt that says, you paid me back, and then I give it to you. And now what happens, if we say that you have to write a receipt, then theoretically I could keep the shtar chov originally, because what did we say? It has value. I want to use it to cover something in my house. I want to use it for some other purpose. I can use that now because you have a shovar. You have a receipt that shows you paid, so we're not worried. I'm going to pull out the promissory note and say, hey, you owe me money. So now, what's the question? The problem with writing a shovar is what? Okay, we're going to talk about this twice today. There's always a concern that mice are going to eat up the paper. Okay, so if you have to keep this shovar forever, right, because let's say I keep this promissory note, I have a good safe place to keep it, but you don't have a great safe place to keep your receipt. If you can't keep your receipt and mice eat it up, then again, I could pull out the promissory note, and so writing a shovar is not necessarily the best tactic. So there's a machloket about it. Tanakama savar kotvin shovar, but Rabbi Yehuda savar ein kotvin shovar. So now there's a debate. Do you write the shovar or do you not write a shovar? Okay, so now again, how does this fit in? Tanakama hold you write a shovar. If you write a shovar, then I can use my original shtar. Right, so now there's a debate. Rashi actually brings two different girsas. Okay, we'll go with the one that Rashi quotes at the beginning. Actually, Tanakama hold ein kotvin shovar shtar parua. You don't write a shovar, which means that because of the problem, Rashi says, of the mice. But what do? You return it to him, and he's supposed to burn it, and you're not really allowed to leave it, because if you leave it, right, even if I give it to the lovet, to the borrower, theoretically he should burn it, because if he doesn't burn it, it might, I don't know, wind might blow it out of his window and someone might come across it and bring it as an IOU. So because of that, once you give back once the shtar is finished and you pay back the money, the shtar chov is no longer useful for anything, according to Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda savar ein kotvin shovar. And because ein kotvin shovar, so then, right, if you don't write a shovar, then, okay, so then again, right. So according to Rashi, Rabbi Yehuda says kotvin shovar. And since you write a shovar, then you can actually keep the shtar chov. Since you can keep the shtar chov still has use, and therefore if you walk out carrying it on Shabbat, you're obligated. Okay, there's also a different way to explain it according to the Girsa it says in our Gemara, but I'll leave it at that. Okay, so there we have a third answer to this hamotzi shtar chov, what the machloket is between Rabbi Yehuda about why it might still be useful after the fact, okay, after the loan was returned. Rav Ashi Amar, okay, now Rav Ashi, until now we've been talking about really that the shtar was in the hands of the malveh, probably. Now we're talking about once the shtar goes into the hands of the lovet might want to keep it. Okay, we talked about before you would burn it because maybe it'll blow out your window or someone will steal it and then they'll claim you owe the money. But Rav Ashi says, you want to use it as proof and say, hey, look, last time I borrowed money and I paid it back. What's your proof you paid it back? You pull out the shtar and you say, look, you gave me the IOU. Here's the IOU. I already paid it back. Look, I have a good credit rate. Right now it's easier to track people's credit rates. In those days, that was a good way to track credit rates. And that's why we might be talking about the lovet taking it out on Shabbat, the borrower. He might still have a shtar chov that he already paid back, and the malva gave it to him, and then he might pull that out on Shabbat. And that's according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says that's why it would still be valid, whereas Tanakama doesn't really think that anyone would do that, and therefore doesn't think that you'd be obligated. Okay, moving on to the next topic. We're now getting into leather. What's the size for leather? According to the Mishnah, it was a kameh, right? To make a little kameh, you would make a little satchel and put the spices in there, or the leaves that would help you, that would be your amulet. So that's the amount. So Ba'amine Rav Amir Rav Nachman. He now asked Rav Nachman the following question: Hamotzi or bakama? How much? What's the size? Amrale keditznan, like it says in the Mishnah, or kedei lasot kameh, just like it says in the Mishnah. Okay, that was obvious, right? That's what it said. Now he says hama'abdo bakama. What if I want to? What now? This, if you see it's in brackets, some people think this doesn't have to do with it doesn't belong here. Even if it does belong here, we'll read it and we'll explain it doesn't really belong here topic-wise, because what they need here is what's the shiur that you're obligated for tanning the leather. Okay, not for carrying, but for tanning the leather. What would be the shiur? So he says, it's the exact same amount. The amount for tanning would be how much would you tan to be chayav the malacha of tanning, right? Not the malacha of hotzah that we're talking about. The malacha of tanning would be in order to make an amulet. Next question. Now we go back to carrying. Le'obdo bekama. Let's say you carry out a piece of leather that you're planning to tan. It's not yet tanned, right? Obviously, before we were talking about it was already tanned because it's kedei lasot kameh, right? It would be something that was already ready for use. So now we say, what if you're going to tan a piece of leather? What would be the size? Amalei loshna. Rav Nachman says it's all the same size. Umanat timra. Where does he get this from? Keditznan. Like it says in the following Mishnah, Hamalabein v'haminapetz v'atzoveh v'atoveh. Someone who washes the wool, combs it, dyes it, and spins it. Shiuro k'malo rochav asit kaful. It's all the same amount. Okay, for the different processes. What's malo asit kaful? It's if you spread your thumb and your index finger and you measure from the tip of your thumb to the tip of your index finger. That's a seat. Kaful is double that amount. That's the amount of the string that you have to do, okay, that you would do to be chayav all these melachot. And many people say also kamalo rochav asit kaful. You see it's in parentheses. Different gear says about whether you say that. Again, sewing two strings would be the same size, okay? Not sewing, weaving. Alma kevan delitve kai shiura ketavi. What do you see here? Since all those early stages, you're doing the minapetz, the milabein, all those are to get you to spinning the wool. Therefore, their shiur is going to be the same amount. Okay, so it's the same amount as that. Likewise, la'abed is going to be the same amount. Hachanami, right? So likewise here, kevan de labdokai, since it's meant to be tanned, the leather, shiuro kemeubad. Okay. What about, since that was all very nice, because you said, since you're going to tan, shalola abdo bakama, but what if you're not planning to tan the leather? Let's say you have a piece of leather that you're not planning to tan. So then what do we do with that? Amarle loshna. So again, he says, it doesn't make a difference. Okay? So now, it's all the same. So now they say, wait a minute. And if you remember, we had this with the teat. Right? You're talking about an early stage of the process versus a later stage. Here, you're not even planning la'abed ta'or, so maybe it would be a different size. And why do we think this? So eitive, now we're going to bring a contradiction against him. Hamotzi samanim shvuyim kedei litzboa behem dugma le'ira. The amount that you're chayav for the herbs that you're going to use, if you've already soaked the herbs and you've made to make the ink out of them. So the amount is in order to color this is a stopper in the weaving loom. But if you take the raw materials, the herbs themselves, which is going to be similar to the leather that you're planning to tan versus leather you're not planning to tan, Tanan, it has a different shiur. Klipei agozim, but klipei rimonim, satis upua. Okay, these are all different things that they use for dyeing. Kedei litzba behem beged katam lepis svacha. The amount would be something much bigger than just this stopper. It would be in order to make a little piece of cloth that they would put to cover the holes in their hairnet. Remember all the hairnets and the holes they had in the hairnets? So they would put something in there. That's a bigger piece. So you see the raw materials, you need more of them. So why here with the leather don't we distinguish? So they say, ha'itmar ala, amar Rav Nachman, amar Rav Ravua. Rav Nachman himself said about this, you wouldn't start the process and start dyeing, prepare dye for such a very small amount. You wouldn't do that. If you already have it prepared, then that would be something useful. But to prepare it, you wouldn't start preparing such a small amount. Okay, what about this? If you take seeds for your gina, your backyard, okay, or for your field, whatever it might be, before you plant them, Tanan, it says, we could grow geret. Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera omer chamisha. Either, the number of seeds that fit into a fig, or the size of a fig, or 5 seeds. So we're talking multiple seeds. Ve'ilu batar tisarinu, but after you've already planted them, Tanan, zevel v'chol hadak kedei lezabel bo kelech shel kluv, divrei Rabbi Akiva. If you're talking about how much fertilizer or fine sand you would use to fertilize, how much do you need? What's a shiur? Well, the shiur, in order to fertilize 1 stalk of cabbage. What do you see? That's a lot more, right? That's less than 5 seeds or a handful of seeds that fill up into a fig. This is just for 1 kelech of kruv, okay? And chachamim omrim kedei lezabel krisha, okay, leeks. So either which way, it's 1 versus 5 or a lot of seeds. So again, ha'it marala amar papa, ha dezaria, ha delo zaria. Again, it's a difference. Seeds before they're planted are not the same as seeds once they're planted, right? The zevel was all about fertilizing them once they're planted and they're already growing. But this is, or maybe they're not even growing yet, but they're already planted. Before they're planted, they're basically worth less. Right? You wouldn't ever plant just 1 seed, right? It's not what you do. You plant a bunch of seeds. First of all, a lot of them end up being duds and all that. So there's difference before you plant and after you plant. Third question. So each of these times we're going to say this is different. It's not the same as leather. Okay. Baretit, the clay. This is we already learned. Before you mix it with the water. Tanya modim chachamim b'Rabbi Shimon b'motzi shofchin l'rishut harabim sheshiuram b'revi'it. Remember, the rabbis agreed with Rabbi Shimon when it came to, right, they had all these specific shiurim for what liquids, but when it came to water that's bad, we're going to dump it all out, right? Water that's dumping water that we really don't use for anything, the shiur is a revi. So the obvious question was, why are you obligated at all? What can you even do with these things? He says, you can use that water in order to make clay. But notice what it says, the shiur is a revi'it, whereas the shiur for teeth, for the clay itself, was just a very small amount to put as a cover. Okay, we're going to see it right now. Right, to fill the cover of this metal or clay utensil. So again, hatam nami kidam ram, like we said, lefisha ein adam toreach behen legabel tatit lasot lebo pikor. You don't start mixing the water with the clay for a teeny amount. If you already have the clay ready, then yes. Okay, so each time we answer, it's unique to that situation, and it wouldn't be the same. Whereas leather, untanned or tanned, right, could still be, right, won't have such a difference between them. Okay, and therefore Rav Nachman theoretically said it's all the same. Tashma, now we're going to bring another source that seems to indicate otherwise. There's 3 different types of leather and tanning processes that one does. Matzah, the chipa, the diftera. So now they have to explain what these are. Matzah kemashma'o, like matzah sounds. Matzah, you don't do very much to it. So, delo maliach, delo kamiach, delo apitz. It's not salted. You don't have the flour. It goes through you put flour on it, and it's not treated with gall nuts. Bekava shiuro, how much is the shiur for this? Tane Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda, kedei litzor bo mishkolet ktana. Now here's already our point. This is something that's lo me'ubad. Rav Nachman said if it's not me'ubad, it's not processed at all. It's kedei lasot kamea, and here it's kedei to cover a very small weight. Okay, so that's going to be our contradiction. We'll keep going on though. The comment, and what is this amount, by the way? Amar Abaye, Riva de pumpadita. It's a quarter of a litra of pumpadita, okay, in their measurements. Okay. Chipa. So what's chipa? Demaliach velo kamiach velo apitz. You've salted it, but you haven't done the other processes to it, not flour, not walnuts. The kama shiuro, keditnan, or kedela so kamea. Okay, this is just like ours. Diftera, what's that? Demaliach v'kamiach udelo apitz. You've done two parts of the process, but not the walnuts. The kama shiuro, kedei lichtov alav et haget. Okay, what's the shiur? In order to write a get. Okay, there already it has a different shiur. Anyway, what's important for our purposes? Katane miat kedei litzorbo mishkolet ktana. And by us it says the kamea. So how do we explain that? So we say Amar Abaye riva de pumpadita, which is not the same amount. So now they say, oh wait, that's not what Rav Nachman was talking about. There's a difference between untanned leather and untanned leather. Okay, there's two different types. Hatam bibi shula. The braita there that was talking about the matzah and that, where it said this very small amount, was talking about when you, that amount, that was when it just comes off the animal and it's very moist and you can't even really make anything out of it. So the only thing you can do is put it around this mishkolet tana, and therefore it's going to have its own shiur because that's the only thing it's worthy of. But once it, a few minutes later or a few hours later, or at some point, once it's a little more dry, then if it's lo me'ubad, it's not processed, it's still going to be the same shiur to make a kameh. Because theoretically, you can make an amulet, a cover for an amulet, even without treating the leather. Okay, but when it's fresh right away, and it's not even usable for anything. The Hatnan, but what about this source? The Mishnah says, Habeged shlosha lemidras. The shiur of a cloth is 3 by 3 tvachim for tumat midras. That's if you're going to sit on something, right? We already learned it's 3 by 3 fingers, right? Which is different than 3 by 3 tvachim, hands breadth. 3 by 3 fingers if it's for regular tumah, not for midras. For midras, it has to be bigger. But we said 3 by 3 even, right? Poor people would theoretically use even a 3 by 3 very small cloth for other things, but for midras not, for sitting on. Hasak arba'a al arba'a, ha'or chamisha al chamisha, mapatz shisha al shisha, bein lemidras, bein lemet. Now, what's the important part for our purposes? We're talking about leather. So, tane ala habeged v'asak va'or, kishiur letum'a, kach shiur lahotza'a. So now we say, wait a minute. It says 5 by 5 tefachim here. That's not the same as the size for a kameh. So we seem to have a contradiction here. So how do you explain? So the answer again, hahu b'kor tobla. This is actually talking about something different. This that we're talking about for Tumat Midras is something that was tanned in a particular manner that it's unfit for wrapping, for writing on. It's unfit for anything. And because of that, the only thing you could do with this piece of leather is sit on it. And that's why it's going to be 5 by 5, because you need, in order to sit on a piece of leather, you need a space of 5 by 5 for it to be worthy of anything. But if it was tanned in a way that you could use for wrapping for anything else, then it would be to make wrapping for an amulet. Okay? So again, we've answered all the questions, although we did raise a lot of questions. Rav Nachman seemed to say the shiur is the same throughout. We already learned now that, well, it depends what your leather can actually be used for. If it's moist and it can't be used for anything, or if it's, so hard that it can't be used for wrapping, then it's going to maybe be a little different. But he was talking about the average case, whether it's tanned, whether it's not tanned. In general, it was basically used for wrapping things. Okay, moving on. We're still kind of sticking with the high, but now we're moving on to cloth, parchment. We're going to learn all sorts of things about parchment. Okay, if I understand this correctly, again, someone who knows more about this would be able to say better. But it seems that they take the hide of the animal and they split it into 2 parts. Okay, now each part has 2 sides. There's the side that faces the outside and the side that faces the inside. So you take the hide of the animal, you take it off, and then you peel it into 2 layers, basically. Okay, and then there's, again, so each layer, one is called the cloth, that's the outer layer, and we're going to learn this word, the duchsostos, which is the inner layer. Okay, and different ones were used for different things. The cloth was known to be thinner. That's why they like to use it in the tefillin, because the tefillin box is very small and you need a very thin cloth. Whereas the mezuzah, they use the duchsostos because it was thicker and it didn't need to be so thin. Okay, and they would use the inner part. Now, Again, each side, so if you assume this is the outside of the animal, so you have the inner part, right, the outer part, and then there's the outer side, which is, we're going to call it the hair side, versus the basar side, the flesh side, which faces the flesh. And again, with the inner one, you're going to have the side that is closer to the outside and closer to the inside. Okay, that's just intro to this whole section. So the Mishnah had said, Klaf kedei lichtov alav parsha ktana. And if you remember, there were parentheses in the Mishnah that said, don't read this, but duchstostos kedei lichtov mezuzah. And that probably came from the Braita that we're going to see. Uraminhu. Klaf v'duchstostos kedei lichtov alav mezuzah. My mezuzah, so let's stop there. So, Klaf kedei lichtov alav parsha ktana. What's the parsha ktana of the tefillin? Just Shema Yisrael, the first paragraph. But now it says in another source, Klaf v'duchtostos kedei lichtov alav mezuzah. Now mezuzah has Shema and V'hayayim Shamoah. That's a lot of a bigger piece of klaf than the one said in our Mishnah. So how do we resolve that? My mezuzah shabbat. They say when they said mezuzah there, they really meant the mezuzah in the tefillin. I don't know if you've ever heard this usage, right? They seem to be calling tefillin mezuzah. So the Gemara asks that, but karele letefillin mezuzah? Who calls tefillin mezuzah? Mezuzah is a mezuzah, tefillin is tefillin. Why would you call tefillin mezuzah? So they say, in fact, I'm going to show you a source where actually they use the words interchangeably, and they use a mezuzah when it relates to tefillin. The Hatanya, ritzuot tefillin ima tefillin metamot et hayadayim b'fnei atzman. Okay, we have to understand what tumat yadayim is. We've talked about this before, but in case you don't remember, we'll review. In those days, they would store the Sefer Torah and all their parchments in a very safe place. And they also would store their truma in the same place because all of it was considered sanctified, and they wanted to put it in a protected place. What happened? Back to the mice that we talked about earlier. The mice would come and eat the food, and then they'd eat through the parchment and ruin the Sefer Torah and other stuff. So they said you can't put, right, they're basically, instead of saying you can't do it, they basically said, if you touch them, it makes your hands impure. And then you're not going to want it next to truma because then you'll impurify the truma. So basically, they said all these things are matame yadayim. So now the question is, which part of the tefillin is matame yadayim? So the Braita starts off, the straps of the tefillin, if they're attached to the tefillin, then they're also matame yadayim. B'fnei atzman, if they're separate from the tefillin, ein metamot et hayadayim. And you touch them, no problem. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda omer mishum Rabbi Shimon, hanogea beritzuat tahor ad shiga b'ktzitza. Even if they're attached, he thinks, if you touch the straps, that's not a problem. If you touch the box, then you're matame yadayim. It's matame your hands. Rabbi Zakkai Mishmo, here's the important line for our purposes, Omer. He says in the name of Rabbi Shimon something else, tahor ad shiga b'mezuzah atzma. Unless you actually touch the mezuzah, which means the parchment, you're not going to be obligated. You're not going to have tumat yadayim. So what do you see here? Mezuzah can be called tefillin. Okay. But now they say, wait a minute. Go back to the Braita. The Braita started off and said, klaf u'duchtostos kedei lichtov alav mezuzah. But then it says in the continuation, v'hamid dikatani seifa, klaf kedei lichtov alav parsha ktana shebetfilin shehi Shema Yisrael. Okay, a klaf is a problem. In order to write on it, right, the klaf, what's the size? Parsha ktana shebetfilin shehi Shema Yisrael, which seems to indicate that what they talked about in the beginning, kedei lichtov alav mezuzah, must have been mezuzah. That seems to say, now it's a little tricky because there it said klaf u'duchtostos kedei lichtov alav mezuzah, but it seems like there's one shiur for that and there's one shiur for the tefillin. So now they say michlal dereisha b'mezuzah atzma askinan. It must have been what we read about the duchtostos and the klaf was really about the mezuzah. And hachi katane, this is how you should read it. Klaf u'duchtostos is the topic, the koteret, the title. Shiuram bekama, how much? Duchtostos kedei lichtov alav mezuzah. Klaf kedei lichtov alav parsha ktana shebetfilin shehi Shema Yisrael. And now we have it very simple. The Braita was just had a little mistake in it. It wasn't, we didn't have the full version, I guess. And really, there's klaf for tefillin, duchtostos for mezuzah. Very nice, all good. We can end the sugya here. However, the sugya is going to continue with something to make things a little bit more tricky. Amarav, duchtostos harehi keklaf. Rav comes along now, and he says, duchtostos is just like klaf. Ma klaf kotvin alav tefillin, ach duchtostos kotvim alav tefillin. Now he's going to say you can actually write tefillin on duchtostos. Now this is going to raise all sorts of issues. First, they're going to bring our Mishnah as a problem. Tnan, klaf kedei lichtov alav parsha ktana shebetfilin shehi Shema Yisrael, which makes it sound like klaf is going to be that shiur, but not duchstostos. The fact that our Mishnah specifically said klaf sounds like only the klaf. So they say that's not really a problem, lemitzvah. It's better to write tefillin with klaf than with duchstostos, as we said, because it's thinner and it fits better. So better to do that, and therefore the Mishnah, now what's the Mishnah talking about? The Mishnah is not talking about laws of tefillin and mezuzah. The Mishnah just wants to tell us the average case, right? What size cloth? Well, since cloth is used for tefillin, that's going to be the size cloth that you're chayav for taking out on Shabbat. So therefore, the Mishnah just talked about the mitzvah, in other words, what the ideal is and what the average person uses it for. So that's not a problem. But now we're going to have a real source that's going to create a problem on Rav. Tashma, halacha Moshe Sinai. We know it's a halacha passed down from Moshe. Right? This is a way of saying it's stronger than Rabbanan, not as strong as a Doraita. It's this in-between stage, like a very old tradition. Tefillin ala klaf u'mezuzah al duchstostos. Okay? Each one has its own special thing you're supposed to use. Klaf bimkom basal. Okay? Now, when you use the klaf, which is the outer layer, you use the side of it that faces the inside, that faces the flesh. Duchstostos bimkom se'al. Okay? And the duchstostos, you use the part that faces the hair, meaning the outside. Okay, so again, it's the inner layer, but the part of the inner layer that's facing outside. So anyway, what do you see here? It sounds like tefillin can only be made with klaf and not with duchstostos. So why did Rav say it's all the same? So again, they say la mitzvah. The halacha Moshe Sinai is for the mitzvah. It's ideal, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. The hatanya, but wait a minute. It says shina pasul. It says if you change, it's pasul. So they say, on mezuzah. That's only on the mezuzah, not on the tefillin part. Tefillin, you can switch. Mezuzah, you can't switch. They say, no, but hatanya, but there's a brayta that says, shina bezeh u'bezeh pasul. Now, what is bezeh u'bezeh? This and that, this and that. Well, we're talking about only two things, mezuzah and tefillin. So it sounds like you can't switch tefillin and use duchstostos. So we're still stuck with, how does Rav say that duchstostos could be used for writing tefillin? That's what we're really struggling with. So what did they answer? Shina bezeh bezeh. Actually, both are talking about mezuzah. Idi v'idi mezuzah. And what does it mean? Bezeh u'bezeh. Had katvinu aklaf bimkom se'al. Inami aduchstostos bimkom basal. Remember what we said. It has to be the inner layer, but the outer side of the inner layer. So it's coming to tell you if you switch and you use the side that's facing inside from the inner layer, or the inner side of the outer layer, both of those are problematic, and that's what the bezeh u'bezeh is. That's one option. Another option to answer this question was, all we're trying to do is to keep that shina. That shina is a problem only by the mezuzah, and then we can be left with tefillin is okay to use duchstostos, which will support Rav. So as long as we can explain somehow that it's all about mezuzah is the issue about changing, and not about tefillin, we're okay. So Ibai came Shina bezeh u'bezeh Tanahi. It's machloket Tanaim. Tanya. Shina bezeh u'bezeh pasul. Rabbi Acha machshir mishum Rabbi Achi bar Chanina. Amar mishum Rabbi Yaakov Rabbi Chanina. So basically, we have a brayta that shows us a machloket about whether Shina bezeh u'bezeh is pasul or not. So therefore, we can just say that Rav holds like Rabbi Acha, and that's a good answer. Rav Papa Amar brings a different answer. Rav Amar Ketana de Menashe. He holds by a different Tana. We're going to quote him right now. The Tana de Menashe. If you write on paper or a cloth, right? You obviously can't write tefillin on paper or a cloth. Ala klaf, ala gvil, ala duchstostos kshera. The gvil is the whole thing before you split it into two. If you write on those, it's kshera. Now, I actually assumed it was tefillin, but we don't know what this is talking about. Katva mai. Ilema mezuzah. Well, we already said mezuzah klaf mikatfina. You don't write mezuzah on klaf mezuzah. We just said it's very clear you can't change mezuzah. It has to be on duchstostos. Elalav tefillin. It must be about tefillin. Okay, so therefore, what do you see? It can be written also on duchstostos. So Rashi, Rav must hold like him. But then they say, wait a minute. But nobody thinks you can write tefillin on the gvil itself. Ella, so therefore they say, forget this source for Papa, you're wrong. So nothing, this doesn't prove anything. This is talking about a Sefer Torah. Okay, so Sefer Torah can be written on all three, and therefore this has nothing to do with tefillin, and therefore throw Rav Papa out the window. Now they're done with that. Now they want to bring a brayta to support Rav. Maybe this brayta supports Rav's reading. Right? Before we brought contradictions, now we're going to bring a potential support. Okay, it's talking about that you can't switch your tefillin shalosh and use them for your tefillin shal yad. Okay, you can't change the parchment, take the parchment out of there and use it for there, because the tefillin shalosh has more kedusha. They say because it has the shin on it and the dalet. If you remember, we talked about the knot in the back of the tefillin shalosh. So the majority of the word shaddai is written there, whereas the yud is only on the arm. So therefore, tefillin shalosh is considered to have more kedusha. So you can't switch one and use it for you can't switch the rush to be used for the yad cloth. Then it says kayotsebo, and all the more so, tefillin shabalu, sefer Torah shabala, the tefillin that wear out, or a sefer Torah that got worn out, ein osim mehem mezuzah, lefi she'ein moridim mikdusha chamura lekdusha kala. Likewise, you can't turn a sefer Torah or tefillin into a mezuzah. So now, what does it seem to imply? What's the whole reason here? Ta'ama de'ein moridim, because you can't get lower in kedusha. But ha-moridin, if you could, theoretically, osin, you could actually then use something that was used for tefillin for mezuzah. So what do you see here? Diktiva amai. Lav diktiva duchstostos. And what were you writing it on? If mezuzah, we said, has to be on duchstostos, then it must mean, we were talking about theoretically, could you take tefillin that was written on duchstostos and use it for mezuzah? And the answer is you can't, because it's lowering the status, but it's not because it's the wrong material, right? And you can't use that. So this would prove, Rav, that you could write tefillin on duchstostos. So they reject this. They say, lo, you can't use this as proof. Diktiva ala klaf. Oh, it's actually written on klaf. Well, now we have the other problem. If it's written on klaf, how could you think of using it for mezuzah? Well, mezuzah klaf mikatvinan. And then they say, surprisingly, even though it seemed very clear until now, you can't change, it has to be on duchstostos, they're now going to say, you actually could. V'hatanya, here's a braita. Katva ala klaf, ala niyar v'ala matlit psula. Doesn't it say in a braita, katva ala klaf, ala niyar v'ala matlit psula? Oh no, sorry, here we're going to see the proof, my mistake. This is all how we know you can, in fact, write mezuzah on klaf, not from the first opinion. But Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Rabbi Meir, haya kotva ala klaf mipnei shemishtameret. It actually is very well protected, the klaf, and you can, right, like it'll last long. Therefore, you can write mezuzah on klaf. So now they say, okay, so basically this switches everything we learned so far. We kept saying mezuzah obviously has to be only on duchstostos, and tefillin, we were trying to show Rav, who said it could be on both. So now they say, hashada'ati lahachi, now that we just showed that it's clear from a braita that mezuzah could be written on klaf, and we weren't super comfortable with tefillin being written on duchstostos, even though we kind of proved that maybe it could be. Hashadati lahachi l'Rav nami lo tema. Now they're going to shift what Rav said. If you go look back for a quick minute, Rav said duchstostos harei klaf ma klaf kotvin alav tefillin af duchstostos kotvin alav tefillin. Now that we found this braita with this opinion that Rabbi Meir allowed mezuzah to be written on klaf, he says lo tema duchstostos harei klaf ela ema, flip it around. Klaf harei duchstostos ma duchstostos kotvin alav mezuzah af klaf kotvin alav mezuzah. Which makes sense in terms of what we said before, that the klaf has to be very thin for the tefillin. So it makes sense to say the tefillin has to be written on klaf, whereas the mezuzah could be more flexible. It could be written on either. So in the end, they flip everything that Rav said, and they basically say, and then it undoes our entire sugya, that basically it's the mezuzah that can be written on both, and it's not the tefillin, which then all the problems we raised on Rav are not problems anymore, because there's really no question on that. And then the only question is, how do you know that duchstostos can be, that klaf can be used for mezuzah? And that we prove from this opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, who talks about Rabbi Meir's opinion. And then we just say that he holds like Rabbi Meir. And we'll end with that, and we'll pick up with the ink tomorrow.